Farming, like life, is a mind game. Join me as I talk with Roberta Bellamy about how to protect our mind and our relationships while handling the stress of farming. If you're the woman who does it all, farm work, housework, bookwork, homework, getting up at the break of dawn, this is the podcast for you.
How do you multiply by fractions, Mom?
Get away from the cares of the day. Restock, rootstock, feedstock, seed stock. Chat with women around the world who raise food, flowers, and fun. With your host, Kay Castrataro. That's me. Welcome back to Food, Flowers, and Fun. I am your host, Kay Castrataro. As always, we are sponsored by Penlight for Farmers. We are helping you to create purposeful farm lives full of time, energy, and abundance. And today, I am so excited. We have Roberta Bellamy, and I mispronounced it because that's what I do. Roberta Bellamy is with us today from Medical Family Therapy and Consulting. And thanks for coming today, Roberta. I'm so glad to have you. How are you today?
I am well, thank you. And it's such a privilege to be allowed to speak to your audience. I'm excited about this. Yeah.
Oh, well, I think you have a really important message for us. So you came from a farm family and, your business name talks about therapy and consulting, which is one of those things that some farmers might be like, that's not a farm topic, but it totally is, especially because of how you got into it. So would you mind just starting off and tell us how you got into this world and about your farming background?
Not at all. I appreciate the introduction. So I grew up on a family farm. I come from a multi-generational farm family, rural North Carolina. Our family has been in North Carolina as long as I know, as long as I can remember. All of us are there. And it was the first I'll say we were row crop producers primarily, small livestock, some logging, farmers. Whatever we need to do, we do it all. I was that grandkid that loved the farm. That was my happy place. And so when I was the end of the 70s and into the 80s, I was an older teenager at this time. During the farming crisis that we hear so much about now. The stress of all of that coming together at once and the situation that we were unaware of at the time, my father, who was one of the primary farmers of the farm, had a predisposition to a pretty severe mental health issue. Which we probably all know now from so much conversation. Stress affects everything. It exacerbates anything that's already going on, any illness, physical, biological, or psychological. So the symptoms of the condition he had was so exacerbated by the stress that it took us out of farming. Now I'm also the caveat is this was before Oprah Winfrey came into our living room and gave us all of this information.
I'm a product of the 70s and 80s myself. And so, we didn't talk mental health. We didn't know anything about it. And, I can remember growing up and you would hear about, oh, she had to go to a hospital because she had a mental breakdown. There was it was a mental breakdown. And now I look back and I'm like, it was untreated stress, like all of this mental health it's the idea that if you just keep ignoring it and working harder, it's going to be okay. So can you tell me, what did it look like both on your farm? Like what were some of the conditions on your farm that were contributing to the high levels of stress? Because we all know that you can have a stressful environment, which definitely feeds into us. I mean, I think most of us right now are feeling that in the political realm, that regardless of what side of the aisle you associate with, or if your aisle is suddenly shifting and you're saying, oh my gosh, I never thought I would, I never realized I was a raving feminist. Like, how did that happen? But all that, but then you've got your day-to-day stuff. So what did it look like for you in a real, like, growing up in it, earthy look?
Oh my goodness, that is such a great question. Thank you for asking it. So again, I was a young teenager, so I got that front row seat watching the stress play out in all the adults. Keep in mind, on a multi-generational family farm, there's one farm that supports several family units. So a lot of times we're not thinking about that, if that's the case. Healthcare providers are not thinking about that. So there's a lot at stake between the different sub family units.
Yeah.
Um, and so as the children, I was one of quite a few grandchildren. We were all hearing our family units handle it in different ways. And the so I tell people, stress is going to show itself. It's going to come out because it's trying to get your attention.
Right.
And
And so give us some of that because I think farmers are really good at ignoring their stress. Like they pretend it's not there because it's very inconvenient to deal with it. So,
yeah,
what are some of those signs that you remember looking and seeing, and also as a professional that you're like, when you start seeing this, when you start hearing this, these are red flags for us. Help us out with that.
oh my goodness. All right. So this is a big conversation. I could say so much about this. Um,
Go to it. That's
so
what we're here for.
so so our the things that we don't want to deal with that are too hard to deal with because we love our family members and we don't want to deal with we don't have a succession plan in place. We don't want to deal with why is this one working more hours than that one and he just got a new truck and we don't want to deal with it because we love one another and we don't know how to put those boundaries in place.
Yeah, we don't know how to
Don't
talk
know
about
how.
it.
We
Yeah.
don't know how to talk about it. All for quite often because we love each other and we don't want to create problems. So we keep it quiet and we hold it in. And I tell people all this, it's going to come out. You get to decide how it comes out.
Mm.
Or you can not decide to do anything with it and it's going to come out the way it comes out. And one of the most frequent, what we call in the world of my language, like mental health or behavioral health, is a secondary way. So the primary feeling you're having is fear. I might lose them if I say anything. They might disown me if I say anything. It's fear or other things, shame or guilt that we just like can't look at. So on the day-to-day actings, interactions, if that gets touched, that tender spot, it'll almost always come out as anger. You know,
Because
pet is the
anger is
most.
a safe emotion. Like it's so interesting.
Yeah,
I found this like, yeah, I've been in therapy for 100 years. So this is one of the reasons why I totally love this because I'm a very, look inward, understand how our minds work and our bodies
yeah,
and our, all that stuff. I just eat that up. But that was something that was really interesting for me that I could deal with anger very easily. I didn't mind feeling anger. I didn't mind even receiving anger. Like anger was fine. Sadness,
yeah,
boy, sadness was scary. There's something about that sad feeling where you're just like hurt. Grief is
yeah,
another one that I find to be really hard. And I think fear is one of those as well because we can feel so powerless with fear. And
yeah.
so instead of sitting with that really uncomfortable, scary feeling, we just hit the rage button. And then it all goes away because now we're not afraid. Now we can act. Now we can say something. We might not do the right thing, but we're not
Uh-huh.
afraid anymore.
And Kay, it's in line with our culture. Our culture. We're resilient, and we'll show up for the fight, and we stand our ground, and it looks familiar. So if I'm angry and my family member is angry back, and then we go to our corners and we settle down, everybody in the room understands that it looks okay. But for one member to come up and say, I'm not really angry at you, I'm scared because I don't know what's coming around the corner, which is anxiety. Anxiety does not like the ambiguous, I don't know
Yeah,
what's coming
the
around the corner.
unknown.
And so when we say that, nobody knows what to do with it. Oh, you're scared? Should I be scared? So, covering up feelings, not just towards others, but to ourselves, It's
Mhm.
just a little way that we've learned to cope. Coping strategies are great in the short term. You know, they kind of get us through those immediate things that are stressing us out. They become problematic if you use them right on simply because the problem doesn't get solved.
Yeah.
So much of what I do is um, one of the coping strategies I say all families use, all of us use it, are triangulations. You'll see
Oh,
it if you're in the work environment
yep.
too. You're like you got two members. I often see it between fathers and sons if they're both working the farm, and the mom gets pulled in to buffer the the difficult interactions. And
So
what
for
I've
people who aren't familiar with that term, triangulation, can we break it down for them a little bit, or maybe I will because I'm the layperson. So the way that I always look at triangulation is that person one really has something that they want to talk about, or a difficulty with, or something they're happy about, like anything. They have a relationship with person number two. They find that they want to say something to person number two, but they don't know how to do it. So they say, I'm not going to talk to person number two. I'm going to talk to person number three. I'm going to bring them in. I'm going to talk about the problem. And then person three will be like, oh, well, I've got to solve this problem. So then person three will go to person two. And there's like this whole little game of like telephone kind of going on. But one and two never actually deal with the issue. And then what happens is that you get further away from each other even when you want to be close. And then this other person ends up like taking sides and getting into a very awkward position. So that's my layperson explanation of it. And I also want to go back to that coping mechanism that sometimes you need that third person. Like
yeah.
there is a place for venting to a friend. Like my sister is my best friend, and it doesn't matter who out there I get annoyed with. My sister eventually hears about it because I'm like,
Yeah.
"Ah." But
Yeah.
I never leave it there. Like it, do I ever leave it there? I try never to leave it there because now I recognize it and I say,
Yeah.
okay, so I vented my big emotions. Now I'm calm, but really the person who's responsible for dealing with this is me, and I need to actually talk to this person. So then I have to figure out how am I going to confront it. So how do we
Yeah.
get out of triangulation? Because it's so very natural and so very comfortable.
Yeah. Oh, and that was beautifully said. My husband says, he says it like this. This is between A and B. See your way out of it.
I love that. See, I should have let you say it.
But I will. No, thank you. But that's my husband's language. He just goes right to the heart of things.
That's
Um,
beautiful.
Farm women tell me this. They say, Roberta, my role in a farm is to buffer
Yeah, the
and
peacekeeper.
protect the relationships in the family. And it's between the husband and the children or the partner or the wife tends to be that buffer and support system.
Yeah.
And so they'll say to me, that's my role. And I will respond in, your family and you know what works for your family. What I will add to that is when you recognize that you are in that role and the symptoms of stress are showing themselves and your body's screaming a little louder, you're not sleeping well, you got headaches, stomach aches, those kinds of symptoms start trying to get your attention because that's what your body's going to do. It's normal for a lot of stress
Mm-hmm.
on a person. So, also in those cases, you can choose to detriangulate yourself. That's the language. Get yourself out of that in gentle ways. And what you just said, Kay, is direct communication. I've seen some of the families I work with. It's just so beautiful. They will make sure their whole family is aware of what a triangulated scenario looks like
Yep.
so they can recognize when somebody's just been pulled in
Yep.
and the conversation isn't going straight between the two individuals so they can call each other out on it kindly, gently.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, I saw what you did there.
Wait a minute.
Um,
Isn't that a triangle we're making?
yeah, isn't it
Where's the
funny?
straight line? Like you can come up with all kinds of ways to address it as I don't know. In our family, we like to have a lot of joke. We have a family of three. So because I'm a single mom, so
Oh,
yeah. So triangles are like they're a thing. Like,
they're the thing.
and I am the mom, and I am the buffer, and I have a son in particular with a lot of mental health challenges. So there's a whole lot that goes into that. So I have definitely spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to support because I call myself the emotional filter feeder. I feel like I'm the oh, what's the word I want? The oyster. I'm like the oyster that's cleaning out all of the crap from the ocean. So when my kids have a lot of stress, they dump it all right on me and then I kind of filter it out, which is lovely to have that capacity to do that. And it's also not helpful all the time because it doesn't teach them how to handle their own stuff, how to sit with it. And so I think that idea of like identifying those triangles and calling each other out on it. And then what do you do? Because we haven't been taught to really disagree with each other in a healthy way. I think our political conversations are a sign of that. I don't like what what you're saying, so I'm just going to say you're stupid. And that solves everything because you're
Yeah.
stupid, so I don't have to listen to you.
End of conversation.
Right,
Moving right on.
exactly. And if we're in those families where that, they might not say stupid, but I had a certain person in my family who I will let remain nameless because lots of my listeners know my family pretty well, but looked at me and said, you might have a lot of information, but you're being played like a two-bit fiddle. And I was like, oh, so you're calling me stupid? No, I would never call you stupid. I'm like, yeah, you kind of did. If I've got the information and I'm not
Yeah.
coming to a logical conclusion, that's kind of stupid. So I addressed it,
Good.
but we do that. We just toss it off with, oh, you're being played. So how do you deal with that? How do you get past
Mm. And I'm going to add a complexity to that as well. There is something about the generations, I think, that shows up in how do we address things that, the elephant in the room. Sometimes there's just an elephant in the room, and then sometimes it's not quite as stark. But the generational things show up. For example, grandma and granddad or mom and dad, they say it, you do it. You don't challenge it because to challenge it is a show of disrespect. Now, my grandkids, which I have six of, they come in, ranging from 3 to 19. They're teaching me a lot. They're a little more challenging because they might come up and just sit down and say it like it is. And
they'll
so
disagree with you
they will disagree with you. And
because my generation is teaching our kids to speak their minds. Like my kids
yeah,
know, and it's funny because in our family we have I know and they know when they're speaking their mind versus being disrespectful. And I can look at them and say, you have every right to tell me you're not happy. You need to be respectful. And I will actually model the tone. I was like, I need you to say it like this. Mom, I'm angry at you. Not screaming, but Mom, I'm angry at you. And I'm like, do that. And then they can do it. And it's like modeling it, but it takes so much work. And it's so much easier to just say, you don't talk back to your mom.
mm-hmm. Or because I said so. That's what my parents,
Right?
because I said so. But your demonstration is beautiful. So there's this you don't want one side of the polar opposite. You don't want because I said so, end of discussion. You always respect us no matter what we tell you to do.
Mhm.
Versus I'm going to speak my mind all the time, no matter who I hurt or that where I come from is it's always about balance,
Mhm.
somewhere in the middle, which is what you demonstrated. It's like I want you to be heard.
Yep.
There are some rules of engagement, some
Yes.
gentle, I use the term gentle boundaries. There's gentle rules of engagement because we care about one another.
Right.
And that whole idea of fences make good neighbors.
Good
I
old Robert Frost.
I tell what there's so much wisdom in define where, and it I don't not necessarily need to be a fence, but define where that gentle boundary is. There's times you can step over it, but to be able to recognize on a day-to-day interactions with your loved ones, there are some boundaries that keep us all
Mm,
healthy and keep our relationships healthy.
yep.
So yeah, it's challenging. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of mental work
Mm,
and emotional work because you have to uh, calm your emotions because you're feeling stuff and
yep.
you want to get angry,
Yep.
but you're calm in your emotions. You're finding ways to let it settle before you have some kind of a reaction. You want to respond and not react.
So I love what you just said about that, about taking care of your emotions, your own personal emotions before you can engage in this kind of communication. I think that is so huge, and that's where again, I think we don't always do a good job of self-evaluation and, reflection and really understanding what's driving us. Because what I have noticed for myself is that when I'm able to stay when I feel confident in who I am, I know who I am, I know what I stand for, I know the person I want to be in the world. I also know my triggers. I know how to notice when I'm getting hot under the collar, when I'm starting to get snarky. We use the word snarky around here a lot. And then to respond to that, to say, "Ooh, you know what? This is not a good time for this conversation," or "I need to take a deep breath and calm down for a minute." But you have to actually do that work first, because if you're not really secure in yourself, these conversations can feel very threatening, I think. And can you speak to that? Like, we like to think that our families are the most secure places that we can be, and in my experience, and sometimes they feel like the least safe and secure place for us to be truly ourselves. How have you seen that play out, both maybe in your farm life, but also, in the lives of the farmers that you work with?
Um, so I'm going to start out by saying the whole where stress shows up with farmers is where farm and family intersect. Because we want these things for our family. Oh, but they have to go, to the farm, the resources, and then the stress will tend to show up between the family members in very specific ways.
Mm,
Um, so to your point that the work has to be done first, that's a huge, well, if we break it down into generations, maybe my kids' generations are hearing that message and know that language. My generation to my parents' generation, it's not as um,
it's newer.
palatable. Yeah, yeah. So when you're all on the family farm doing your work or having get-togethers or whatever that looks like for your
Yeah.
family, recognizing that different generations are at different places in
Mm,
that, I am thrilled that our generations are now understanding what you articulated so well, that doing the work is for you. So first understand yourself,
mm,
because once you understand yourself, what's happening, why you're feeling what you're feeling, um, why you're feeling it, how you're feeling it, where it showed up from,
yeah.
you can then understand other people. And then you can understand granddad when he loses his temper and he says what he wants to say and then shuts up and you're not allowed to, you can
Yeah,
recognize.
you can't have a conversation with that. It's like it's done. He has made the universal statement. That is now the way that reality is, and live with
Exit.
it or don't like it. Like that, there is that sense, and we used to say it was just old man syndrome, like you got old
Yeah.
and hit a point where you just didn't care anymore. But I think that generational thing really has a lot to do with it. That the positive thing about the way that I'm right on that cusp. I was born in 76. So I'm kind of like in between generations, even though I'm a Gen Xer. And I grew up with my grandparents and my great grandparents right there on the farm with us. So I have like a really interesting background in the fact that in some ways I'm programmed like somebody from the 1800s. And in other ways, I'm super, super modern about my ways of like
I understand.
communicating. And so it it's a lovely thing because it helps me to be able
Mhm.
to understand a really wide group of people. But it is really challenging because when you see that happening, you can also be like, but it would be so much better if we could actually have a healthy conversation about this. So, what do you do when you're in that situation where one generation or member of the family might be really self-aware? They've done a lot of self-work. They're really into like everybody speaking their truth to each other and respecting each other. And then they come into a spot where that's not valued. And it's actually maybe even looked at as a weakness or a sign that you've like drunk the Kool-Aid is the word
Mhm.
that comes around in my family quite a lot. Um, how do you keep relationship in that way? And I know that's a loaded question, but I'm going to throw
That
it out there.
I appreciate the pitch. I want to do something with it, because there's a couple of things that contradict one another. One is to be in an if we're talking about a farm family that they are required to interact with one another in some kind of regular way. Quite often, our farm families, that is the setup.
Hmm.
So it is not easy to, well, we will just see them occasionally when we go to church or have a picnic or something. Let them see the grandkids. Like
Hmm.
it's easier to keep yourself being affected by that environment. If that's not the case and you're having to like work with this person, work around this person, or regular um, communication with this person, and I'm also going to say this, quite often we use other tactics such as like an emotional, I'm cutting them out of my life. I hear
Yeah,
that a lot because I just can't be in that environment. It's affecting me.
yeah, it
That's
feels toxic.
right. And it can have a lot of benefits unless you have to work together. Then how do you do that? It's not a effective solution.
Mm.
So this is and again this is a you have to the person has to understand what is right and healthy for them,
Mm.
but for the most part it's recognizing you're having to be to some degree in that other person's environment,
Mm.
recognize what might be driving the problem. So for example, if it's a generational thing, and the older generation just will not have a conversation that needs to be had, um, and if possible, if there's more of you in that family unit, like the cousins and the siblings that share a little more of your viewpoint, surround yourself more with that. So having support for yourself is going to be instrumental,
Mm.
so that you as a group, the cousins or the whatever that looks like for you and your
Yeah.
family, you have a support system. You can remind each other, that not to be damaged by whatever is said or however it is said, and to
Mm.
be able to communicate with one another about what just happened. Or
Yeah.
so that making a little bit of sense the way I said it, because it can
Yeah,
sometimes.
I mean, so I'm thinking like, can you give us like a practical, a real life example? Like maybe I'll throw an example at you and you tell me some recommendations that you would have. So let's say you are getting together for like a family birthday party and you've got all the farm family around. And so you've got farming members, you've got non-farming members, you've got multi-generations, you've got diverse opinions on all kinds of stuff, very hot topics, politics, all that kind of stuff. And you get together, and one group really wants to talk the politics that they know are going to trigger the other group. What do you do with that?
Mm. So this has
I've
been
had this situation. I've handled it in different ways every single time. So I'm thinking that this is
ah
a pretty common one right now.
okay. Yes, this is something that has been very new. I would say, I don't know, since COVID forward, we have been put in situations that has not come up before. We can usually adjust ourselves in some way to keep ourselves out of situations that are just unhealthy. I am hearing more frequently the use of um, not getting in one another's environment. And it saddens me to say, I wish there were a,
And
a
by that,
practice.
do you mean like if you've got, let's, you've got the liberals here and you've got the conservatives here, that the liberals just stick with the liberals and the conservatives stick with the conservatives? Is that what you're saying about staying in your own environment?
So I'll give you an example. So
Mm.
say it's Saturday evening or Sunday lunch at grandma's. We all, that's a thing. We all
Yeah, we
have
used to.
that.
We used to go to grandma. Oh, my grandmother passed, but we used to go to her house every Sunday for
Sorry.
Sunday dinner. Yeah.
So that is an incredibly important ritual that we have in our farm families and agrarian
Mm,
rural communities in general. Family is really, really important. And so I'm hearing more and more from my um, newer generations, the younger generations, that they just can't do that anymore. And
mm.
and it's not just politics that's creating the problem. It's there's a change of cultural, can I use the word values? There's a foundational value that is broad, but then there's cultural values like around what young parents are feeding their kids, for example, what they
Yeah.
allow, what they don't, which
Acceptable and
all,
unacceptable behavior, like the communication that we were talking about beforehand. Like
yes,
if a child says, "No, I don't want to hug grandma," and grandma's like,
right,
"Of course you hug me. You hug your grandmother when you say hello. That's good manners." And
yeah,
I'm like, my kids don't have to hug anybody. Like that, their bodies,
yeah,
their bodies. They shake
yeah,
hands, they say hello. I'm like, you always greet somebody.
yeah,
That's good manners. Your
very
body
good.
is your body. You don't want to touch somebody, you just say, I'm not
Yeah,
comfortable with that, 12 and
yeah,
14. But that does create some friction with the extended family
yeah.
sometimes when they don't understand why that would be even allowed.
That's it. And again, going back to the generational, but also the political language around why don't you eat this kind of food? Why don't you let your children eat this kind of food? Why do your children go to this doctor? Why do they follow this protocol?
Mm,
The parents that are in the middle, that are raising the children and confronted by a generation that may not understand what they're learning. We've got some new information. So
yeah.
the idea that as a population, as a society, we get new information. Our physicians typically we trust, and it's a judgment call for the parent.
Mm,
So we're at a place right now that there is so much polarization, and quite often it does have a lot to do with the generations.
mm,
I do see that show up. So what I have been suggesting to families around this conversation is, what can you put things in place? So, in other words, if the grandparents demand to see the grandchildren, they come over to your house, they just open the door and walk in, no matter what. It is a generational thing. We
It's
talk
so funny
about,
because I'm like, knock on the door before you go into somebody's house. You just knock on the door. I go to my parents' house. I knock on the door and say hi before I walk in. Like,
yeah, yeah. I don't think every family gets that though.
maybe not, but
And then,
I'm like, I would never walk into anybody's house without saying, like,
yeah,
knocking and saying hello. Like, I feel like that's
yeah,
a respect for their space. But
yes,
again, like some
mhm,
people
mhm,
that value or that intensity of that value has
yes.
shifted for people.
Yes, yes. And so
That's
we might talk
interesting.
about, well, will your parents or grandparents, whatever the case may be, take a video chat call? Do they have a smartphone? And if they do, so it's like merging the two cultures, the two
Mm,
generations. I'll let my kid call you every day on the video and ease them into it. Sometimes that's helpful.
yeah.
Those kinds of things, you join the two cultures and see if you can come up with a way that doesn't impede in your family sovereignty, your
Yeah.
your family's the gentle boundaries. Because if you can get that to work, then you keep your support systems. Your
Yeah.
children get to grow up with extended family support systems intact, and you have shown that gentle boundary that you're going to raise your children the way that is right for you, and it may
Mhm.
look different. So getting creative with those kinds of things is usually what I suggest, but recognize this is happening to our families, particularly our rural families and agrarian families across the board.
Mm.
It is not specific to one family unit. I think I hear from my
That's
families all the
so,
time.
I love that message because I know my my sister and I often are like, man, we are so bloody dysfunctional. And the fact is that we're all bloody dysfunctional. Like the
Yep.
entire
Yep.
world is dysfunctional in
Yep.
some way. It's just a
Yeah.
matter of how aware we are of it.
That's the point.
And what we
Yeah.
all consider dysfunctional. Like,
That's the point. I tell women all the time, you're not broken. Your family's not broken. You're adjusting to stress.
Mhm.
And the more you ignore and hide from the scary, it's not as scary as it is when you think it is when you face it. But the more you hide, the louder the symptoms get, whether physical symptoms, psychological symptoms, or the family unit system
Yeah.
symptoms.
So let's talk about that because I do think that the being able to observe the way that our mental health and our stress and our relational stress, like I think it's funny because, in the work that I do with farmers, I bill it as I basically have like three pillars and I look at, recognizing your purpose, understanding what it is that you yourself are there to do. So that like who are you meant to be in the world apart from your farm, apart from your family, apart from like who are you? And then say, okay, how do we order our days so that we can fulfill your purpose? And what can we get rid of if it's distracting from that purpose? And how do we do all that? And then the final thing is how do we deal with the people in our lives who may or may not share that purpose. And I
Yeah.
always
Ooh,
feel like the relational part is where the farmers tend to be like they're great when it's what do I want for my farm? What do I want to accomplish?
yeah.
What legacy do I want to leave? You can tease that out. It takes a little bit sometimes, but you can tease that out. When you're talking about a work plan and what crops are we going to grow? How many days are we going to be open? What are our markets? They're 110% into that. All right, great.
Yeah.
Then you come to now let's talk about how we communicate. And all of a sudden it's like rats on a sinking ship and they're like, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm not talking about talking.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so how do we
Yeah.
start to, first of all, recognize that we have that going on? Because I think recognizing it in ourselves and in others is the first step. And we've talked a little bit about, you were talking about headaches and um, some of the physical symptoms, like maybe you can't sleep, maybe you can't eat or you're eating too much. Maybe like me,
Mhm.
I anybody who listens to the show has heard this a million times, but if all I want to do all day is sit down and watch Chinese dramas, then you know that things are not good for me. There's something I'm avoiding. And I'll give myself one day a week with like Saturdays. Saturdays when the kids are not here, I'm like, okay, that's my decompression day. If I want to watch them when the kids are here, like I know that's when I start saying, oh, crap, now I got to go deal with something because something is niggling at the back of me. What other signs, like for your dad, because some of us are not aware of this in ourselves. When your dad was starting to really, fall into an unhealthy place, what did that look like?
Oh,
It's a
it was
very
pretty
personal question.
stark, and that's quite okay. This is why I do what I do.
Mm,
So I appreciate the question. With my father, it was very stark. Tremendous amount of weight gain, tremendous amount of weight loss. It would go up and down
mm,
depending on where he was in his mental state. Taryn, in his mental state, the situation he was dealing with, there were extra symptoms, but I think we can all, there's the potential of, I think somebody, they're always talking about me. They think
mm.
I'm not keeping my farm clean. They're not, they're judging me all the
Oh, I
time.
like the they. The they.
Mm,
I picked
yeah,
up on that word they. Like I feel like that's a big sign that something is not healthy in us when there's this like amorphous they. It could be like those other farmers, those my family, those politicians, those whatever it is. But when there's that they, that isn't a specific person, it's not a specific situation, but it's like this amorphous, they are doing something or they are thinking something. I think that's a
yeah.
really big internal one that we
Hmm.
can recognize. Thank you for mentioning that one. I've
Thank
never
you for
phrased that
catching.
before.
Thank you for catching that because I want to expand on that. There is this, my goodness, I think I see it in everyone I talk to. Um, and we are going to catch this in ourselves as well. It seems to be part of the human experience. However, we're feeling about ourselves, we tend to think that other people are feeling
Project
that
it.
about
Yeah.
ourselves. Yeah. So if when you get into a slump because stress is high and the family is reacting to it and your body might be reacting to it, and then suddenly you're finding yourself, they're all seeing this. They think, I mean, I try to portray the perfect family, but surely they know we're not perfect. What, you know, like, what is perfect anyway? They are seeing this. Oh, I heard that remark that he made when he saw me at the grocery store. They are thinking this about me and my family. I
Hmm.
need to show up better than what I am. Um, that so what I tell people is first recognize, and this is so much what you talked about being aware. How do you feel about yourself?
Yeah.
So if you start having patterns of theys, and those, and fear to go out because somebody's going to judge what you're wearing,
Yeah.
that you're not in the field, that you're not at the house cooking, that you're not doing,
Oh, you're at a ball game instead of at a farmer's market. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. All those
yeah.
the shoulds, the a good farmer would be doing this. A good farmer would be weeding. A good farmer would be, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm hearing that.
And it is so much about how that person feels about themselves.
Yeah.
So even if I am hearing from a family, that person did this to me out in the community, they said these terrible things to me. And maybe that thing did happen. And I will say to that family member, what you're seeing is that person themselves feels bad about them. And through that conversation, that's usually what comes out. So innately, we're not out to maliciously hurt our friends, neighbors, and family. We're just not
Let's hope
built that
not.
way.
Yeah.
It's coming from somewhere. And again, that those deep emotions, you don't feel like you're enough, you don't feel like you're good enough, there's something not okay with you. It is seems to be a behavioral tactic we use to put it on someone else because it makes ourselves feel better.
Yeah.
So it always goes back to what are you
Well,
feeling
and then we
about
can become
yourself?
a victim. Then that, like that's the other thing. I feel like there's been this really interesting victim mentality thing going on because it's funny. I was raised always to be like, you're not a victim. Stop acting like you're a victim. And yet, I look at so many people who told me that, and I'm like, but you're acting like a victim. Like you have agency. And that's the other thing I really
Yeah,
want farmers to know is that no matter what you're facing, you have choices. And your choice may be as simple as how I'm going to view this situation. That may be the only thing that you have control of is, am I going to look at this as a situation that is going to break me? Or am I going to look at this as a situation where I'm going to grow? That might be the only thing that you have control over, but you have control of that. And that changes everything. So, oh, I'm getting shivers. That happens to
uh-huh.
me sometimes. Like some truth comes through, and I'm just like, oh,
I
hold on
love
to
it.
that.
I love it.
And
Mhm.
I think that that's a really important thing for people to realize is that no matter how much generational baggage we're carrying because so many of those thoughts that we have about ourselves are not our thoughts. They are not, maybe even not even our parents' thoughts. They are thoughts that have been like passed down for generations
Yeah,
and could have started with somebody that we never even met who had some
yeah.
experience that didn't get resolved that now we get to. I tell my sister and I joke all the time, we're like, oh, how lucky for us, we get to be the pattern breakers in our family. Something really beautiful about being a pattern
Yes,
breaker in the fact
yes.
that you can say, no, there are things that happen that I don't like and I want to do them differently. And beautiful and empowering, and it's also stinking exhausting. So
Uh,
when we're pattern breakers,
yes.
feel that angst and that extra weight of things as you're working through it is totally natural. Yeah,
I love, love, love what you just said. I want to go down that rabbit hole a little bit further.
yeah, yeah.
So I will always come at any conversation like this, and I try to live it. You have the power. You always have the power. Um, and it is not to dismiss what someone else has done that might not have been kind,
Even
thoughtful,
abusive. Like, let's face
even
it. I mean,
abusive.
a lot of us have been raised with different forms of abuse in our families, and to
Hmm.
call it anything else is doing it a
Right,
disservice. So,
right. Yeah,
if you're out there and you're in an abusive family, we hear you, and that is a violation, and it should hurt because you don't want to accept that. Even
absolutely.
then, go ahead and tell us what we do when we're in that situation.
Absolutely. Call it what it is. Recognize it what it is. Recognize it for what it is. You are valuable and worth love,
Mm,
respect, kindness, just as you are. You do not have to do anything. You do not have to achieve anything. You just have to show up. You're enough as you are. You always have been. So if you are in that abusive relationship, or someone has taken your put you in danger of any kind, emotional, psychological, physical, you are worth moving yourself out of that,
mm,
confronting that in a way that you remain healthy and safe. Let me
wow.
make sure
Yeah.
I highlight that. You're enough as you are always. Um, I would take it a step further, even this power that I talk about, you always have power over your circumstances in this way. Um, and that's why I follow with not to dismiss what other people may be throwing at us, doing
Yep.
to us, or what have you. But it is, while we may not be able to have any effect over what somebody does or says, people are going to do and say and be what they
Whatever
are
they want
around us.
to.
But our power is in how we respond to that. And the reason I say this is when you respond in a way that is counter to what someone else was expecting, it changes those dynamics most of the time. When you get a change, anything's possible.
Mm,
You break the pattern. The pattern has been broken. You show up, someone shows up with a fist, and he's going to, I say he or she, or they
they.
come out, they, exactly. He, she, but let's just
There's a
say
place for
they.
that amorphous they now.
There absolutely is. When they show up they've crossed those gentle boundaries in an unhealthy way. When you respond in the way that I love some of our biblical language here. I'm just going to insert some of this is very, very helpful. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It's this
Mhm.
idea that if you want to receive respect or thoughtfulness,
You got
dish
to
that
give it.
out. Dish that out. It's a, what did you say? You model it, you
Mm,
demonstrate what it could look like, and it disarms people. It's
mm,
very disarming when, again, keep yourself safe. But when you change what they are expecting, you change
yeah.
their expectations, you disarm them,
Yeah.
or the gossip, or
Yeah,
whatever
and
it is.
that's so important. Like I feel like the our ability to respond to how do I aggression with kindness, that is so that's hard. Like I want people to
Very hard.
hear very clearly like that is in some ways it's not how we're programmed as humans because we
Hmm.
are programmed to protect ourselves. So, that fight, flight, or freeze, there's nothing in fight, flight, or freeze that says love your enemy.
You're exactly
That
right.
is a divine thing to be able to show love to somebody in that way. And yet, that's what's
Yeah,
going to make the
yeah,
change in the world because fighting just increases the amount of anger and hatred. So you're just getting more of the same. Running away might be very important at times
yeah,
for our safety. And so again, if you've got to get out of a situation,
Yeah.
Get out of Dodge. Like it's take care of your physical and your emotional safety. Do that. And freezing just lets the status quo go. Even it might not make it worse, but it's not going to make it better. And so that reaction in love, and I'm not going to say reaction because reaction sounds like it's something that is almost intuitive and an instinctual thing, but acting in love, speaking in love, figuring out how to find that I look at it as the image of God in each one of us, and not everybody who watches this, believes in God, or they have their
Yeah.
own spiritual framework.
Yeah.
And yet there is something that I would say divine in each one of us. And that if we can look at that and try to find that piece of each other, oh my gosh, like how much easier it is to try to speak in love, because we're like, oh, you're not an enemy, you're not the other. You're another, you know, human being trying to do the best that they can. And maybe your God reflection is a little bit tarnished right now, but there are plenty of ways where my God reflection is really tarnished.
That's it. We are absolutely in this together. That's the equality here. And this, what you had said early on, and we keep reiterating, is that doing that work, it sounds so hard, but doing that constant reflecting, recognizing you're enough as you are, that's
Mm,
hard. That's hard because you're constantly seeing something else on the outside, people
yeah.
reacting to you in all kinds of ways, and it makes you question yourself. But you are enough, always have been, period. You came into this world like that. You don't have to achieve anything. And if you can start there, a lot of times you end up there after all the work. You understand that later. But it's that you become self-aware so that then you can maybe have the ability to sit with those emotions a little bit and choose your response, which that is where your power is. Circumstances change when you change the way you respond to others.
Right.
It's not
Yeah,
easy.
and
This
it
is not
it's
easy
it's
stuff.
not a one and done. Like I wish that these things were one and done, where it's like I said this about balance once. We talked about how do you balance work life and, family, church, like all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I had this feeling about balance that it was something that once I achieved it, I had it. And then I just had to maintain it. And what I realized is that if you are growing and changing and learning, your need to find balance is always growing and changing and learning with it.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that is one of the hard truths, I think, too, because we don't like to feel like we're adding more work to ourselves. And so staying put feels like the safest, smartest thing to do. And yet I would
Mm.
argue that that is the worst thing that we can do, because we're going to miss out on all of the amazing potential in ourselves, in each other, in the situation, that
Mm.
we could really build something amazing if we were willing to keep changing, learning, growing,
Yeah.
questioning, all that. This is like I said, I love that whole idea that we can be better.
That is beautiful. That's a mic drop moment. But I am going to say something after that. That is a mic drop moment.
Yes, no, go ahead.
That's the whole package there. But as farmers or people who are agrarian, we look at all we have to do maybe is look at the environment around us, and you can see this mimicked in life that flowers are their most beautiful when they're going through the pain of opening, because there's a lot of tension in a flower opening,
Hmm.
or trees that are are straight and set in their ways, and when that hurricane comes through,
They snap.
they snap. And it's the ones that can dance around and be flexible. Those are the ones that survive. They're both beautiful. It's just you can see, some mental health conversation,
Yeah,
behavioral health
you can
conversation.
build that resilience. Just because you're designed as a pine tree doesn't mean you have to stay a brittle pine tree. Like you can learn how to stay in your pine tree nests and become a little bit more resilient so that you don't snap off huge pieces of you when the storms come through.
Yeah.
Because I mean, the storms are coming through. They always do. Like
Yeah.
I mean, your family ended up losing their farm and saying, "Hey, we're not doing farming anymore." Like that's a
Yeah.
huge loss to a family, and it can be something that breaks families. Like my great grandfather went through a huge period of depression after like our home farm ended up getting sold under eminent domain, and it was so mandatory sale. He did the same thing. He spent months where he just laid on the couch in the living room,
Yeah.
and he was like, he had nothing. Like it was just
Yeah.
he was devastated, and we don't want that. Like we're all going to experience struggles. We want to have that ability to suffer, to grieve, to say this really sucks because sometimes things just really suck. And,
Yeah.
trying to pretend it doesn't is just foolish.
Yeah.
And we don't have to stay there. We can move into something more beautiful and just more.
More. Yeah.
This is and
Absolutely.
this is, obviously why you do the work that you do, and it's why I do what I do. And I kind of want to put a plug in at this point. We're coming right down to the wire. So um, I always do this. I get right to the end. I'm like, oh, I could talk to you for hours. But I do want to put a plug in right now for the kinds of supports that are out there for farmers who are struggling with any of these things. Like when we talk mental health, it's not just I'm so depressed I can't get off my couch like Gramp. It's not I need to go into a mental facility because I have, voices in my head that I can't get rid of. Like it's not that's not the only time you need support. Like sometimes you need support just to be like, man, getting through the day feels really exhausting and I'm not enjoying things anymore. And there are lots of ways we can do that. You can go to a therapist like Roberta, who has got the training to really help you process all this. You can go to relationships counselors. You can do, I do the
Yeah.
journaling type work and consulting and coaching because I find that using the arts and journaling strategies help us to reach some of these things way faster than just talk therapy. And I can talk. So I've done talk therapy and I've done like this therapeutic journaling stuff. And I am amazed at how much faster things go when I bring in art and music and poetry and just writing. Like,
Beautiful.
so all of these things, like we have all these, and sometimes you need a hospitalization. And let me tell you, friends out there, there is nothing shameful about saying,
Mm-mm.
I'm no longer safe for myself or other people. Like if you're constantly snapping at your kids, you might need a little medication. Sertraline saved my children's lives, I swear. because because when I
Yay.
found myself snapping at them for the littlest thing, I was like,
Yeah.
why am I losing my temper over this? This is not that
Yeah.
big a deal. And having that extra support to deal with the chemical stuff in your brain can
Yeah.
really help us. So, you know, all of you out
Yeah.
there, don't be
Yeah.
afraid to ask for help. Like you've got mediation. Those of you who are in farming, we've had ag mediators on here before.
Yeah.
They're free. Go talk to them.
Yeah.
You don't have a succession plan because you can't talk to each other about who's going to get the farm, who's going to get the equipment, what you're going to do with that non-farming relative that, is going to want part of the inheritance but is
Yeah.
not contributing anything. You know, there are people who do this. Go talk to the succession planners. Like, get the help you need. So
Mm-hmm.
that is my plug before I let Roberta have the last word, because at the end of every one of my episodes, I ask you to provide us with one piece of advice that you think every farmer should know. So, what do you think that would be, Roberta?
So since your audience is primarily women,
Mhm.
I would love to say the value, and this is coming from women, women tell me this, the value of them being able to connect themselves to one another because they're experiencing so much of the same stuff has been uh, very highlighted. Now, that's not easy. One of being creative and how you make that happen is going to be a must. One of the things we have done in North Carolina through a couple of programs, Farm Bureau, the State Farm Bureau and maybe the Agro-Medicine Institute. A couple of partnerships got together, and we have a book club that stretches online. It stretches across the entire state. We've just started it, and we look at a book. You can read it or not, and then we come online and talk about it. Or we can also get ourselves together in small groups across the state so that we can talk in more depth and join via Zoom that way. Finding creative ways to get someone that understands what you're going through, and you're not the only one going through these things. I promise you, it is across our family.
Yeah.
And hearing from one another that they're also experiencing this is so validating and helpful. So that would be what I would offer there.
Oh, great. There are tons of opportunities for that. And again, if you're in North Carolina, Roberta can probably give you some information on that. If you're not afraid to do stuff by Zoom, contact me because we do this. We do groups all the time, and I've got a Facebook group that we're trying to get active, but I don't know. I feel like my farmers are not really in love with Facebook, and that's okay because neither am I. But yeah, but there are ways to do it. So let's support each other.
Yeah,
Roberta, thank you so much. This has been so much fun. I
this
love
has
just
been
digging
fun.
into the mental health stuff, and so this has been like candy for me.
It's a great opportunity and conversation. Thank you so much, all for
Well,
what you do. And the conversation was just so fun and spot on and rewarding. And I hope people get out of it what is here to get out of.
oh, beautiful. I love it. All of you, thank you for joining us, and we will see you next time on Food, Flowers, and Fun.
Bye all.
Bye.
How do you multiply by fractions now?
Farmers calling, our show is all done. Goodbye, farewell, so long, adieu. See you next week, same time, same place for Food, Flowers, and Fun. Go in peace. Visit us at www.penlightfarmers.com.